the Prevent channel, which we presented as part of Safeguarding Learning Week in 2025. My name is Stephen Lavington. I'm a service manager in adult care for Safeguarding Dolls.
My name's Lisa Punn. I'm a service manager within Together for Children for the Front Door.
Looked at the learning outcome for this session, and the theme was around safeguarding against radicalisation. It's about early help. It's not about criminalisation. And we want to talk about Channel and your role in Channel. And Channel works by supporting individuals at risk, addressing vulnerabilities and building resilience, because prevention is protection. So in this session, you'll hear understand how we help professionals understand what prevent and radicalisation means, and your role in Channel to help professionals recognise the signs that a young person or adult may be vulnerable to radicalisation, to help professionals understand their role when they're worried a person is vulnerable and potentially being drawn into terrorism, to help professionals understand how to assess and manage their worries, to help professionals understand the channel process and the aims and responsibilities of the panel, and to understand how you may be able to contribute, and to help professionals develop their understanding of resources that may support intervention and planning. So we'll start with what is Prevent. So Prevent is a government strategy to help stop people becoming terrorists or supporting terrorism in all its forms. It's one part of the counter-terrorism or CT strategy, and it's a part of Prevent, Pursue, Protect and Prepare. So what we're talking about today is Prevent, and Prevent works at the non-criminal stage by using early intervention to encourage individuals and communities to challenge extremist and terrorist ideology and behaviour. Individuals who are assessed as being vulnerable to radicalisation can have multi-agency safeguarding plans put in place to ensure they get the necessary support. When we talk about radicalisation, that refers to the process by which a person comes to support terrorism and extremist ideologies associated with terrorist groups. And vulnerability describes a condition of being capable of being injured, difficult to defend, open to moral or ideological attack. Within the Prevent arena, the word describes factors and characteristics associated with being susceptible to radicalisation. So when we think of Prevent, what we see, and this iceberg analogy is we see, in society, we see acts of terror, bombings and the use of vehicles and the use of weapons, and that they're very public. So everyone sees that act of terror. What the public don't see is everything that happens below the surface, around all that recruitment of the person, any fundraising that groups may do, how a person's been radicalised, how they may be dissatisfied with society, and how they have that sense of inequality. And they're the themes below the surface that Channel and Prevent look to tackle. Just wanted to talk about our current UK threat level. So we have the government have 5 threat levels, from low to critical. We're currently and have been for quite a while now at the substantial, which means that an attack is likely. In the last couple of years, we've seen a significant increase in number of referrals into Prevent, and then subsequently into Channel. So Prevent referrals increased from 6,922 in the years 2023-24 to 8,778 in the last year, 2024-25. Channel adoptions remain relatively stable, so the number of referrals that were made that then were considered by counter-terrorism police and then came into Channel, there was a slight increase from 512 to 540, despite that surge in referrals. And what we see is that this suggests a growing gap between referrals and cases progressing to Channel, which highlights the importance of risk assessment and prioritisation.
So when we think about individuals that we might be worried about, might consider referring into Prevent or another support service, these are the things that we would need to be looking for. So it's split into emotional, verbal and physical. When we think about the emotional signs that you might see in an individual, it could be that they are more angry than normal, or that they're withdrawn, so they're not engaging, they're not socialising, they're not attending school or college or a workplace, or if they are there, they're not interacting with other people. It could be that their confidence is expanded and they're becoming quite arrogant or coming across as having kind of grandiose ideas. It could be that they're suffering from depression, and again, that could be a change. They could be upset, short-tempered, overreacting to things. So they're all the things that would fit into the emotional category. When we think about verbal and what kind of things people would be saying, obviously this is giving us an idea of the things that they're thinking. So it could be that they're using extremist narratives or language. They could be fixated on a topic that is a worry. So something that that you would be worried about, not necessarily criminal, but something that is you would just be worried about. They could be asking inappropriate questions, so trying to get answers to things that are inappropriate, you know, beyond the kind of normal realms of conversation. They could be using words that they haven't been using before. So have you noticed that they're using kind of rhetoric or language that is new, or speech that sounds scripted? So you think that someone's told them what to say, or they're watching things that are kind of giving them this language, and using insulting and derogatory names for another group. So kind of racist, homophobic language, anything that you would think is derogatory to a group of people. In terms of physical characteristics, fits in a little bit with emotional, but loss of interest in usual friends and activities. So as we said, for emotional, are they staying in? They're not wanting to socialise. Do they have in their possession extremist materials, or are they accessing things like that online? Are there websites and things that you're worried about? Internet searches that you would be worried about? Is there a change of routine? So, you know, someone who was going to work or education is now not. Are they meeting people at a regular time every week? Is there just something that's changed that you would be worried about? Is the kind of drawing or doodling of inappropriate or unknown symbols? Is there something that you're seeing that that would make you worried about that? And are they attempting to recruit others into that group or cause? So that could start off as really low level. Come and meet my friends, come and have a drink with them. Let's be part of this conversation, join this online group. And obviously that can get a lot more extreme. So they're the types of things that you're looking for when you're considering making a referral, or if you're worried about somebody you're open to prevent. We'll talk about the sense of belonging and people kind of searching for that. And we've got the images there of the football teams, so the two local football teams, Sunderland and Newcastle, and the sense of belonging that people have and are searching for. It could be that it's kind of a rave scene, a holiday scene, something that brings people together and draws them together in one place. Now, obviously, a lot of these things are perfectly innocent, and we wouldn't be worried necessarily about people wanting to join a group or a football support team, or to kind of go on holiday with friends. It's when this becomes kind of an unhealthy fascination, and that sense of belonging is outweighing kind of the need for kind of family life and their normal routine, is when we start to become worried. These are some common phrases from people who are at risk or have been identified at risk, and when they're kind of reflecting on how that made them feel. And it's talking about that sense of belonging. So it felt exciting. So to be part of something, to have new friends, to feel special, that feeling of being understood when no one else had understood them before, being with like-minded people, having a purpose in life, feeling grown up like an adult, part of a community, feeling better about yourself and having confidence, and that it was kind of just theirs. So that sentence, I love that it was ours, that others were outside of it. It's, you know, it's about socialising and being part of a group, but it can also be really insular and really kind of ostracise you from the rest of society when you're part of one of these groups. So it just goes to show, you know, that if you are vulnerable to exploitation and radicalisation, it makes you feel good for a period of time to be part of that group. And it's about supporting people with the awareness of what that really is and what these people are doing. So we're having a little look at like online activity and what worries that might bring. Now, a lot of young people and adults are online all the time, and there are some certain apps that this kind of behaviour is more prevalent within. So we've got there apps such as Gab, 8chan, 8kun, Pteron and Discord. Now, all of those apps can be used for perfectly normal legal things, chatting sites, socialising, kind of like-minded people sharing information about things that they want to talk about. And then we've also got the encrypted apps like Telegram and WhatsApp. So things that people use all the time, but it's just to be aware that they can also be used for online terrorist activity, recruitment activity, and to keep an eye if there was someone who you were worried about who were accessing those apps, protective of those apps, not letting other people kind of see them. And then we've also got the use of dark web and Tor. So you kind of, the underweb, the things that aren't easily accessible that someone's having to go and look for and search for. And they are usually kind of darker interests and things that we might be worried about on a prevent level. A lot of these apps and a lot of just normal forums can be used for ideological discussions with strangers, and we see that quite a lot in Channel Panel. It could be that someone is, you know, on normal apps like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and they're having those discussions, and those discussions become worrying, and that could be something that was referred in. People download violent or ideological material. So again, this could be something that initially you weren't worried about. It could be something that has been on national news, international news, but this person is downloading that, rewatching it, and putting their own kind of ideological spin on it. Another worry that we would have is if there was excessive time spent online. Everybody's different, and we know that a lot of people do spend a lot of time online and on these apps, but again, it's if there's a change, if it's becoming obsessive, and if it's kind of looking at this violent or ideological material, that's when we'd be worried. So what is expected of you if you're worried? So we split this into different categories. So notice. So this could be anyone. It could be school, health, carers, parents. It can be anyone who has any involvement or interaction with a person. So they look at what the issues are, and then they look at the initial concerns. So you can kind of speak to colleagues, speak to a pastoral support if you're in school, or a named safeguarding lead, and then you can also speak to Stephen or I at that level when you check in. You're wanting to know, is this a worry? Is this something we should refer in? Is there something I should do before I refer it in? And then once that discussion's been had and you're confident that you need to make a referral or you want to make a referral, then you share that with the police and with the local authority prevent lead. So that's me if it's a child and Stephen if it's an adult. So we make the referrals for children via our ICRT and safeguarding inbox, and also complete a national referral form. So that national referral form asks specific questions about information relating to prevent specifically. It's the same form that's used by police forces across the country. If you were to Google the Prevent National Referral Form, you would get the most up-to-date form, and that would be sent on to Counter-Terrorism Police in North East. And for adults, it's referred into the Adult MASH in the same way. So you can have discussions, obviously, as I said earlier, with Stephen and I, before you make that referral, or if you need some help filling in that referral and you want to know what information needs to be included in it, you can contact us for help. After you have completed that form, TFC and adult social care and the police would consider that information that you've put in your referral. If it was needed, then would do a MASH assessment to gather any information from partner agencies. So that would be the front doors and adults and children's social care would speak to partner agencies in Sunderland and see if they had any further information that would be relevant to the prevent concern. Police would undertake multi-agency checks, so they would get a copy of whatever assessment we did, and then they could do additional checks kind of outside of the area or on the police systems. Police then make a Section 36 decision on whether or not they recommend the case is considered within Channel. So the police would then complete a prevent assessment framework, which is called a PAF. It's a risk assessment, so it looks at all the different stages and what they could be worried about, and then that could be presented at Channel.
So the next section looks at actually a little bit more into that PAF. So as Lisa said, the PAF is a tool used by Channel. It's used to guide decisions on whether a person needs support to address their vulnerability to being drawn into terrorism, including what the support should look like. It's discussed by panel members, and Lisa and I jointly chair Channel, so we consider both children and adults in that channel, and all the panel members take the information from the PAF to make that consideration. And the PAF is split into 3 dimensions. So we look at the engagement, the level of engagement the person has. We look at the intent, what's the intent for that individual, and we also look at their capability. So are they capable of actually being vulnerable to exploitation and themselves, or actually committing an offence or committing a crime or harm to another person. The case officer in counter-terrorism police will review that PAF every 3 months. So if something's in Channel, they'll do that quarterly review just to see how them dimensions of engagement, intent and capability have changed, if at all. So now a little bit more about Channel. So Channel is a programme which focuses on providing support at the earliest possible opportunity to people identified as vulnerable to being drawn into terrorism. The programme uses a multi-agency approach to protect vulnerable people by identifying the individuals at risk, assessing the nature and extent of that risk, and developing the most appropriate support plan for the individuals concerned. As I said, the Channel meets and considers and assesses vulnerability against the criteria identified within the PAF. As I said, looking at engagement with extremist groups that cause ideology, the intent to cause harm, and the capability to cause harm. It's really important that the element of consent. So support through Channel is voluntary. So individuals or their parents, when under 18 years of age, must give consent to receiving support. And we'll talk a little bit later about what happens when an individual or the family do not give that consent. So the individual must be aware they're receiving support to protect the person from being drawn into terrorism. Consent should be in the form of a signed agreement, and professionals should consider who's the most appropriate to get consent from that individual. So it might be the counter-terrorism police, it may be the social worker, it may be another professional. It's who's involved with that person and who's the most appropriate person to seek that consent. If consent is refused or withdrawn, you can make further assessments as appropriate at panel, and the police will manage the counter-terrorism risk. And again, I'll talk a little bit later about what happens when someone isn't in Channel and what we call the police-led space. Ultimately, if consent is not given, the case cannot proceed in Channel, and as I said, it may be considered in that police-led space. There remains a requirement to monitor the case at 6 months and 12 months, which may result in further attempts to gain consent. So it's that constant question of what is the risk, and will the person give consent to being supported through the Channel process. In terms of decisions to adopt a case in the Channel, there's no channel threshold for adopting a case, and Lisa and I recently did some regional training around a channel with some colleagues from other authorities, and it just in that small group of other channel leads and chairs, there was a lot of discussion and some disagreement about whether the cases should come into channel or not. So as I said, there's no threshold. The panel must agree they're satisfied the individual is vulnerable to being drawn into terrorism and agree to offer support. And panel members attending should collectively assess the risk and decide whether the person is vulnerable to being drawn into terrorism and therefore appropriate for channel, or is not vulnerable to being drawn into terrorism but should be referred maybe to different support mechanisms, or whether the person should actually exit the process without any onward referral. If the panel cannot agree, then a majority decision can be reached. If after that the panel cannot reach a majority decision, then the chair has a legal responsibility to make the decision on behalf of the panel. Panels must adopt or reject. Panels cannot hold a case while a decision is being considered. So if you ever come to channel, you'll hear us quite clearly saying whether a case has been adopted or rejected at the channel stage. I mentioned police-led partnership. Police-led partnership, or PLP, is a safeguard and risk management process led by the police for individuals who either do not meet the threshold for channel or decline to engage with channel, but still prevent relevant concerns or radicalisation risks. And PLPs are designed to manage these cases outside of the voluntary channel framework while still involved in that multi-agency collaboration. So just in terms of process, a channel, we'll often hear the children's cases, then the adults' cases, and then we'll hear any PLPs that are led by the police to ensure that multi-agency collaboration takes place.
So now we'll have a look at the current issues for children and young people. 40% of all referrals to Prevent are for children aged 11 to 15. So, you know, we've got young people who there are worries about, and professionals, family members, members of the public are referring them in with a Prevent referral. A lot of the concerns that are being raised at the moment are around that incel culture and the manosphere. So I think it's been highlighted on the telly recently about kind of this involuntary celibate culture in young men, school-age children, and how that's leading to a culture of misogyny, and you know, there's a lot of information out there and a lot of young people are accessing that, so there is a hyperlink there for you to have a look at. It says for parents and educators, but it's anyone who works with or comes into contact with young people or has children themselves to understand what the communication is like within that culture, and how that looks, seemingly innocent kind of emojis, and what that can kind of portray. Another thing that we're seeing quite often in channel is a fascination and interest in school massacres in general. Children and young people becoming obsessed with kind of infamous killers from America and all over the world. And that link there on the Gov.uk website is a link to some anonymised case studies of children and young people that have been referred into the channel process for that kind of thought process. And then another one, and one that's been around for quite a long time, but we still are seeing, you know, children and young people getting drawn into this, is the right-wing ideology, and how children and young people are getting drawn into that ideology, and what we can do about it, and how we can see signs and identify it, and obviously make those onward referrals. So some hyperlinks there that you can look at. Looking at a child that has been referred into our channel panel in the last 12 months, this is a case study really. So it's a young person who has an interest in school shootings and massacres and is engaging online with people with similar interests. This young person sets up online profiles on Reddit and other social media platforms, sharing their love for serial killers and mass shooters, and contacts people from all over the world. So that's when we're talking earlier about the apps, it's about finding those like-minded people and having those debates online. A Prevent referral was made by school with parents' knowledge. and a social worker and a counter-terrorism police officer were allocated at that point. So we've gone through that process that Stephen was talking about making the referral, about that path, that risk assessment by CT policing being completed, and it's brought to Channel. And that young person was adopted into the Channel process, and an intervention provider was identified. Someone who can support that young person and talk to them about their ideology, their interests, and obviously try to make some changes in their thought process around that. So as part of that referral, there was a support plan that was put in place by Channel. That was internet supervision, so parents and school to be hyper vigilant around this young person accessing the internet, monitoring who they were talking to, what sites they were on, and then also mental health referral, so a referral to our CAMS team to look what involvement they can have and what support they can put in place for the young person, and for them to be attending education and also be educated about the worries. So why we would be concerned, and professionals would be concerned about this fascination, this interest in the mass shooters. So that's just one example of a young person referred in.
So just an example of an adult that was referred in. So this was someone, an individual that came to Channel following being released from prison, and they were in prison for crimes related to the disturbance and riot in Sunderland in August 2024, and the concerns were related to their right-wing affiliations, both in prison and then when they came out of prison, and the referral actually came from the probation service who were working with the person at the time, the adult at the time, following prison release, and there was a lot of concerns around them right-wing affiliations. As was said, consent to Channel is required, and the person was visited to request this, to try and engage with the person, try and engage them with through the Channel process, try and support with maybe a support worker or intervention provider that has been mentioned. However, this was denied, and they did not want to engage in Channel. And as I mentioned, when we don't have consent, then we can't discuss them in Channel. However, the concerns were such that the case actually was progressed to that police-led space, to that PLP, and so they continue to be in Channel, and following the monthly Channel cases, we have that multi-agency discussion regarding that person and the risks to themselves and the community as part of that process. A little bit about yourselves as social workers or case managers. So if an adult or young person is allocated to you as a social worker or as a case worker and is considered within Channel, you receive an invite to the panel meeting. So you're expected to attend for the initial meeting and any reviews that take place. And you're encouraged to bring a manager for support if you're not familiar with the process. So you'll be asked to provide information you hold from a social care or other professional perspective. Remember, it's specific to concerns around prevent and other worries that can be explored within the wider care plan for a person, and or their family. So you'll often be expected to work with a case officer from Counter-Terrorism Policing North East, who may ask you to support with a home visit, for example. It's important that we share and gather appropriate information. And as I said, this may include joint visits. You need to take forward any actions identified for you at the meeting and feedback the outcome to the Channel panel and the Channel chair. True consent is required for an individual to receive support. Support plans linked to vulnerabilities identified in the Prevent Assessment Framework or the PAF, and templates for support plans are available on the Knowledge Hub. We've mentioned intervention providers. So intervention providers are a specialist Home Office approved support, and what they bring is they bring specialist knowledge to be able to counter the extreme ideologies and narratives such as Islamist and extreme right wing, or where ideology is unclear, mixed or unstable. And Lisa and I, as chairs, we have access to a redacted directory for selected IP. So we have a list of, we don't have people's names, but we have their areas of specialism, and we choose the most appropriate intervention provider. And an IP, the consideration for an IP must be considered for every live case. So for everyone in channel, we must consider the role of the IP, or the intervention provider. And support is not time specific. Following someone exiting channel, we also do reviews at 6 or 12 months.
When we're thinking about exiting a case from channel, and we have had some cases that have been in channel and receiving support for 12 months or more, so individuals can be supported for quite a while. We'll consider exiting a case, and if the panel is not convinced that the vulnerability is reduced, then it will remain open. So it could be that, you know, you come to channel panel, you're asked for information about a case, and the wider panel does not agree that the vulnerability is reduced and that it will remain open. If the vulnerability becomes a terrorist risk, then police need to consider escalating that to police mechanisms, so it may no longer be suitable for channel. It might go into a different level of counter-terrorism support. If a case is closed, then ideally we want the individual who's been discussed to participate in an exit interview to allow for learning from the case, and that's becoming something that's, you know, really a focus, so we know what support we're given, if that's been beneficial to that person or not. If the individual drops out of channel, so they withdraw the consent, then the police should consider holding that in their police-led space that we were talking about earlier. And then the reviews. So the reviews take place 6 and 12 months following closure. So that would be CT policing who would bring it back to channel. They would gather information from partners, so not quite as in-depth as necessarily as what had happened when they'd first been brought into channel, but certainly they would make appropriate referrals and to get that information from partner agencies in Sunderland or wider. And then they would review the police intelligence. So any information that they've had over the last 6 or 12 months, that would mean somebody needed to come back into channel, be considered. And then another vulnerability assessment if they were going to re-enter the process. So if CT policing or other professionals felt it needed to be brought back into channel, then we'll complete that risk assessment again and see if there's been an escalation in any of the vulnerabilities.
This is just the last slide. So we do like a flow chart. So as we work from the top there, it's everything that we've talked about, from that prevent referral that's picked up by counterterrorism intelligence and to make that assessment, that section 36 decision. Then as you work through, you can see the consideration of panel, the importance of consent, and the channel support provided, and the impact of any support, and the susceptibility to radicalisation is reviewed. And then finally, we complete our interventions in the cases closed. And then, as Lisa's saying, it's that 6 and 12 month review.